This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and we love making this show available to you free of charge. If you'd like to help us keep it that way, make a contribution to our Karma Jar or become a show sponsor. To learn more, visit our website. Today I'm baking a batch of delicious blackberry scones. I was out in the garden today and saw this wonderful little patch of all ripe berries, so I decided to bring them in the house and make them into a wonderful scone, perfect for tea this afternoon. I'm going to first start by getting my baking sheet ready. So I'm going to cover it with a piece of parchment. Now, normally for scones, you can press them out and even cut them out in different shapes. But because these scones are made with fresh blackberries, they're very delicate. So I'm just going to be pressing it out onto my baking sheet like this. So once I have this ready, I'm going to set it aside and get my dough ready. I'm going to get things together in this large mixing bowl. So I'm going to start by measuring out my flour, and you'll notice I'm taking a knife and lightening it up by getting some air in it, just because it's been sort of sitting and compacting in my canister. And I'm going to measure out 2 cups of flour into my measuring bowl. And to that, I'm going to add a tablespoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 cup of sugar. With my rubber spatula, I'm going to toss that around. I want to make sure that I get that baking powder all throughout the flour. And speaking of baking powder, you know it's really important that your baking powder be fresh. So if you've had a can in your pantry for over 6 months, it's time to get a new one, because it's that chemical that makes our baked goods rise. And if it's been sitting around, it doesn't work as well, and you can have kind of a dense baked good. Now I have 6 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise twice, and then I'm going to turn it and run my knife into it into some small slices like this, and that's going to make this nice little pieces of butter, and then I'm just going to add those right into my bowl. I'm going to use my pastry blender, and I'm going to start cutting that flour and butter together. And as you go with the first pass, you're going to find that a lot of the butter sticks to your pastry blender, so you just kind of move it off with your hands like this, and you keep going. Now you can see right now the pieces of butter are still really big. We want to keep cutting that in until the pieces become almost pea size like this. And now I'm going to measure out about 1 cup of fresh blackberries. Now, if you don't have any fresh blackberries, but you can get some frozen ones at the store, those are fine too. With frozen, though, you don't want to defrost them. You want to leave them nice and whole, just like that. And it looks like I have just a cup. So I'm going to add that into my flour. Now you could see how delicate those blackberries were, so we have to be really careful here. So I'm just going to toss them into the flour, trying not to break them up. And then I'm going to add 1 cup of half and half. And again, being super careful, I'm going to gently mix the cream into the flour and berries, tossing this together until I don't see much of the dry ingredients, that it's mainly mixed in. So that looks pretty good. Now I've got my baking sheet, and I'm going to sprinkle a little flour on the center, and I'm going to put a little on my hands. And now I'm going to take the dough and just spoon it right on top of that flour. This is a pretty wet dough, so you may want to sprinkle a little more flour on top and a little more on your hands. Then I'm going to press this out into a circle that's about 1/2 inch thick. And if you need more flour, just put a little bit more on your hands. Just continue to pat it out. Now I'm going to score these scones. So I'm going to take a long non-serrated knife, and I'm going to just cut down the center of my circle, and then I'm going to cut down the middle. So this is 4 wedges, but I want to get 8. So then I'm going to take each one of the quadrants and cut that in half as well. Now you'll notice I'm just laying the knife down and picking it up. I'm not separating the scones. They're going to bake in a whole piece just like this. Now to finish these off, I've taken just a little bit more of my half and half, and I'm putting it and I'm dabbing it right on the tops. And then I'm going to take a little bit of sugar and I'm going to sprinkle that all over the top as well. Now I've preheated the oven to 400 degrees, and these are going to bake from between 15 to 18 minutes, but until they're nice and golden brown. So these just come out of the oven. I'm going to slide it off the baking sheet onto this little cooling rack. And you can see what I'm looking for here is to have this little bit of golden brown on the edges, and then I want to make sure that the center is nicely cooked too. Now I've let these sit on the cooling rack for about 15 minutes, and now we can serve them. So I'm just going to take a regular pie server, and I'm going to put it with the this side down, and I'm just going to cut right where I made those indentions with my knife. So see, it perfs it really nicely, and then look at all those great blackberries in there. When you're ready to serve these scones, they would be great with some faux clotted cream. And I have a recipe for that on episode number 4. And it's wonderful to put on the scones. Also, if you have a little blackberry jam with it, it'd be fantastic. Well, if you want to get the recipe for the scones, just go to our website and visit the Comfort Tea show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.